Good evening, good morning, wherever you all are. It's lovely to be with you. My name is Justine Owens. I'm the Director of Contest at Shaw Scripts, and I'm joined tonight with several very special guests and my very special colleague, Jenna.
Hi, everyone. Hi, my name is Jenna. I'm coming to you from sunny South Africa, and I'm the social media manager at Shaw Scripts.
So we're just going to give you a little rundown while everyone's still joining on how we're going to be working this evening. So basically, this is a panel discussion with some comments and questions to follow. And the idea is we'll be talking around some topics that have already been raised to us for around 20-25 minutes. If in that time you want to ask a question, please write that question in the comments below. And also, if you would, because there's several on us here today, could you write in the comment who you'd like the question to be answered for? If it's all the panel, put all, and then we know we can just offer it up. So, as I say, I'll be talking to the panelists. They've all got quite a wide range of experience with regard to technology in the world of entertainment. I wouldn't say, or I'm yet to find out, their exact relationships with AI and the ever-present, ever-current chatbot conversation that's going on in the media at the moment. But they're all going, like I say, they've all got wonderful sort of experiences that they can share, I'm sure. And it'll be really good to get your questions, though, because I'm sure there are lots and lots of different perspectives on exactly whether or not this is a good thing, a bad thing, an interesting thing, it's being hyped too much, whatever it is you feel, just come through and tell us all about it, really. Just one house rule, really, for these live sessions going forward, in that's please be polite and respectful to everybody that's here. We're not here to have a rant about things. And if you do want to have a rant or a real complaint, then by all means, send me an email or get in touch with me directly, and I'll happily listen to what your rant is. But this is not the place for that. So let's say a little bit of politeness, but other than that, we should be all good to go. Okay, I'm going to drop Jenna out. She's going to be listening to your comments, your questions, let's say, clarifying them maybe with you as necessary. And I'm going to introduce the panel. So speak to you later, Jenna.
Bye, everyone. See you later.
And Greg has music. That's fantastic. Okay, so guests all, would you like to introduce yourselves? So, Jason, please start.
My name is Jason Avalos. I work at Crafty Visual Effects, and my title is Cinematic Systems Analyst, where what I do is design systems that interplay between different functions within production systems and try to find better ways that can be improved. That includes nowadays looking at screenplays all the way down to post.
Wow. I had no idea that world existed until Blaze introduced you. I am fascinated. We must know more about that in future. Maggie, please.
Hi everyone, my name is Maggie Waz. I am the Director of Operations over at Coverfly, which means that anything that sort of touches on the writer experience, I help manage. So anything from submitting a script to writing out a profile to updating your script to getting coverage and a million other things. So I'm working with script with writers all day, every day. So I'm happy to be here.
Thanks, Maggie. And we thank you for your everyday help as well, because I seem to need to ask for it every day. Blaze?
Hello, I'm a script reader for Shaw Scripts and a writer as well. Very interested in AI, though I'm no particular expert, though I did write a script on it a way back. So yeah, just here with kind of lots of questions and thoughts about it, really. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. And I shouldn't point out, Blaze has been in Shaw Scripts much longer than I have. So his really is quite much more of an expert than me. Carl, please.
Yeah, so I am Carl G. Rogers. I am a writer and director, and some of you may have seen my video on YouTube where I decided to try out a bunch of different AI programs from the screenwriting perspective. And I'm also really interested in AI and technology and all of that stuff because my day job is as a user experience strategist. So I work for a company called Method, and I'm a senior experience strategist there. So my colleagues and I in the tech world are also talking a lot about AI and what that means for the role of technology in our lives.
Okay, cool. Right, yeah, I saw that video. I love that video. It's so funny, especially when it gets the epic fail. So, Greg, I'm going to pause you for 1 second because I need to announce to all the people that are watching at the moment that you are solely responsible for my career and all my mistakes are yours. And on that note,
oh yeah, I appreciate that, Justine. We have known each other how many years? I guess over 10 years now, huh?
Yeah, about 12. Horrible. Yeah.
Gosh,
I was always then.
Well, yeah, no, I've been so pleased to know Justine. We worked together on the reader side many years ago, and to see her whole career develop and be running Shaw Scripts now is really exciting. For my part, I am the head of business development at Slated. So I do a lot of strategic partnerships. I sort of manage the company with my colleagues, Ann and Jay, and I pitch in a little bit on the EP service team, helping films get financed, packaged, and sold. But I started on the script analytics side. Our analysis is human powered, not AI powered. We've done a fair bit of exploratory work on the AI side over the past 10 years. So I've seen some of those early results, and I've seen that develop over the years. I'm probably less versed on the sort of the cutting edge of what's happening now, but I can give you at least a sense of how screenwriters have responded to AI and tried to interact with it over the years, at least as far as that's reflected in our writer communities.
Cool. Okay, so you touched on it. You said you're sorry, human powered as opposed to AI powered. So for the others on the panel, let's ask the demon question. Who does anyone actually use AI in their business? And if so, in what part of their business? Just jump in when you want.
We do a little bit. And for reasons that are kind of silly. For instance, Coverfly employs a lot of readers, and each one of those readers is supposed to submit a bio. Now, there's hundreds of readers, hundreds of bios, and the bio is supposed to follow a sort of specific format, right? You don't want your name in it. You don't want to mention a lot of identifying details, and you want it to be of a certain length, mention some companies, blah, blah, blah. So other writers know that you are a legitimate human being with experience who can speak to their script. Mm-hmm. But it's very difficult for us to review and catch any bios that might not fit the bill. And so we do have AI sort of scanning bios just to make sure that they're good. And we get a little notification if there's a bio that doesn't work, or there might be something wrong with it. And then that prompts us to reach out to the reader. So that's a really simple application, but one that saves us a lot of time and allows us to deliver a better product.
Okay. That's a totally different kind of content. Jason, nothing in your world from this top to floor?
Oh yeah. It's we have a whole machine learning AI department. That's all they do every day is continue further development beyond what it currently sits at, and that's not isolated to just screenplays or any of that nature. It's everything. Probably the biggest in visual effects right now that everybody's quite happy to accept is AI assisted rotoscoping, which is a tedious task of going around and cutting out people or objects, which historically has always been done by hand.
Yeah.
Mouse clicks, thousands of mouse clicks per frame, 24 frames per second.
Yeah.
Very tedious, carpal tunnel causing. But with AI assist, it's leagues faster,
Right.
and sometimes even superior. So that's an example, but it's permeated all the way through. I don't think there's much right now in the world of if you have a process within visual effects that has anything to do with running an algorithm, it's probably being AI assisted at this point, or is about to be, just because it's going to collapse the amount of steps that you need to do manually. We're exploring AI on the ingest side that is taking the screenplay in. And there's a wonderful company, it's a Ukrainian company, Film Stage, and they are exploring and building around AI-assisted screenplay breakdown. That allows them to achieve a breakdown that is far more deep and faster than most breakdown softwares can do. You can chew through a whole screenplay in about 60 seconds, and automatically do the markups all the way through and through down to the props, rather than waiting for you to go back through and tag and highlight. So yeah, it's quite a bit.
And these AIs anybody can answer this, but the AI at the moment, something that, as I was reading in the background for this event, there's this two forms of learning, the machine learning and deep learning. I don't know if I'm making much sense to you, but basically one, we tell it the rules and say, look for this, do this is right, this is wrong. Deep learning, as I understand it, is it develops its own rules just by literally like the weight of data. So in the context of the AI that you've had various experiences with, are these deep learning tools or are these essentially machine learning tools?
I would say that the majority are machine learning, under that way of looking at it. Even if they start as deep learning, the reality is at some point you have objectives that are specific, and they can't just be freeform. You can't just unleash AI willy-nilly in our use. We have a client, we have specific needs, they need to be met. They cannot just be whatever. And they have to be controlled. They can't, it's not good enough to just like text to image. That's fine, but you also have to be able to repeat it and then micro adjust it, as it's getting to be able to do now. At first you couldn't. So at that point it was fairly useless, but novel and worth all the research. But you can't just have it do whatever and go, oh, that's good. That's impressive because it's complex and it was able to do that on its own. That's not good enough for a production purpose.
Well, what about the other guys? Do you have any instances of where something has been allowed to, if you like, create its own bar as to what's acceptable or not acceptable? Carl, I'm thinking of your video when you fed one of your bots the output of your other bot. And that felt a bit like you were creating a sort of, an internal loop of value there in the AI community?
A little bit. I would say that. I mean, they're both, even though they're both, language processing systems, they're not, connected to each other. They're by different companies. So it seems like a loop to us, but it's really just taking it from one, program, putting it into another program. But I was honestly just curious to see what would happen with that. I don't think either one of those, like ChatGPT or any of the other, language-based tools out there, are actually, when we're interacting with them, are necessarily deep learning. But I think they've used different types of learning in order to get to that stage. There's something that they have been using, which I think is called reinforcement learning, where you kind of try to get it to make decisions, and so training it to make decisions with the various types of inputs that it gets. So as far as what you're talking about, where it makes its own rules with deep learning, I'm not sure as far as current uses of that.
Okay.
I ran a stupid little test on accident with GPT yesterday, and
I don't think we should keep mentioning them because they refuse to come. So we should keep plugging them specifically.
All right, I was using an unnamed AI chatbot yesterday to summarize a very little known book. And there wasn't enough information online in order for the bot to do it, but it needed to have an answer, right? That's one of its rules. It has to give you an answer. And so it knew the genre, and this is where it gets kind of interesting. It knew the genre, it knew the tropes, it had a specific structure for how it was supposed to deliver a synopsis, but it kept getting the names wrong and major plot points wrong, which renders it completely useless, but it looked so convincing. And then you would tell it, you would go, well, those aren't the names of those characters. And the only response is, well, you're correct. That's not the name of the character, but this is. But this name was also wrong. And it just kept going in a loop. I did it 6 or 7 times. The structure of the synopsis stayed more or less the same. Major details changed, but there was no way it was going to get it right. We could have sat there for hours doing it and it wouldn't have gotten it right.
I used to teach, I think, kindergarten, you'd call it in the US. And that reminds me sometimes of like a 4-year-old with a very muddy cat trying to explain how there's a lot of mud on the cat and you're never really going to get to the truth. So yeah, it sounds quite empathetic. Blaise, what about your experiences? You said you'd used the bot for screenwriting itself.
Well, I wouldn't say I used it. I tested out one of my script ideas. I think I wrote in a logline or halfway towards a logline of the current script I'm doing, just to see what it would come up with. And I was quite impressed in that it seemed to get a basic structure there, which, kind of low points, midpoints, all that kind of malarkey. So I was quite impressed with that. But in terms of the content, it was very, very superficial and very dull, and there was nothing really exciting or original or new in it. So I think it's got a long way to go. And I mean, looking around, what various writers are saying about it and various people are saying, there seems to be a recurring theme of everyone should kind of get on board and use it. And this is one thing that makes me a bit worried about it, because I think there is an element of danger here that it will erode our creativity and originality, and it will kind of bring us down to a level, and it will make it much easier for writers to just put something in and say, oh, there, now I've got a story, great. And it won't make them do the hard work and go the extra 100 yards to find that original idea. I mean, does anyone have any kind of thoughts on that?
I do. It's actually funny that you mentioned that about someone, when you say, "Oh, we should just get on board with it." When I was in a different Facebook group where a writer posted that in a recent um, negotiation with a production company, he delivered the script, and they wanted him to keep working on it. They actually made him sign uh, a form that said, "I did not use AI at any point in the creation of this script,
Wow.
and that if I do use AI, then our contract is over."
Wow.
And so I was surprised that it had already reached that point that a production company would want to emphasize that so much.
Hmm.
And I think part of it is the copyright and IP issues surrounding it. And the other part of it is probably what you're talking about, Blaze, about the creativity or lack thereof from something that's generated from AI.
Greg, I want to take that to you, because one of the most interesting things to me, with obviously training as a reader with you, was you introduced me to all these kind of conflict types. And something I've noticed when I've seen like Carl's video, other discussions, is these bots only seem to have mastered the hero's journey. There is no rags to riches. There is no genie out of the bottle. There are none of those other story types yet seem to have, they haven't even sort of routinized those. So yeah. I know your role is different now, but could you cast your mind back, if you like, into that wealth of creativity that you introduced me to, and yet this is still is it not a very structured business storytelling?
Yeah, it's so complex, isn't it? I think ultimately the thing that drives our process as screenwriters and as people in the business of helping screenwriters is the audience that we serve, whether that's an audience seeing films or an audience of screenwriters receiving coverage. And what I've seen over the years, Justine, and I can give the room a little bit more context on how we approach story and how that AI could be used there. But what we've seen is that when AI is used to evaluate the creative, and there have been companies that actually released products where it was pure AI review of a screenplay and a score was generated and notes were generated, that the writers rejected it out of hand, I think almost on principle. Like, I think actually the product could have been very good and the writers still would have rejected it, in the same way that people who want organic food want organic food. They don't want chemical assisted food because it's not, there isn't a seal of authenticity on it in the same way. And I think because storytelling is such a human, it's maybe the most human activity that we engage in. For our taste, for our for our interests, we want humans participating in it. And so I think it's almost more of a preference test on behalf of the recipients of the product than it is how effective the product itself is. But in terms of the different types of conflict and the way stories are reviewed, Justine, yeah, I mean, we've always taken, we launched our script analysis product in 2011-ish, and we'd been in R&D long before that. And our approach was to use a human powered review of scripts, but to programize it in such a way that it was standard. So we have 3 reads every time. Each reader goes through the same questions. They fill out the same 11-section form. And then we use very basic algorithm to crunch those responses into a score. And all of that is based on these templates that we've observed of humans over the years of, okay, what is conflict actually? And how does conflict actually behave? And what are the different types of conflict? And yet, at least what I've seen from working with thousands of readers over the years, it's very easy for a human to interpret one form of conflict a million different ways. So, and we've even seen, scripts that several people read and go, there's very little conflict. Then the movie goes on to be made. And there is quite a bit of sort of under the surface conflict that wasn't maybe as detectable. Maybe it was more internal, or maybe it was more of a tension than it was a conflict. But my question, to put back to, to answer the question with the question, Justine, is if you can pile 100 humans in a room and they can all interpret conflict differently and apply different conflict labels to the same script, then how will those humans ever be satisfied with one answer from a bot? It's just so much more complex than that. So maybe we'll get to a point where there's different bot personas, and they're all providing different interpretations based on different trained experiences. Maybe there's something there, but until then, I think, we as humans, we sort of live in the nuance, and we want that nuance reflected in our evaluations.
I'd like to add on to that one of the things that you're getting at, Greg, is how these kind of systems, whether it's machine learning or AI, they do really well with large amounts of data sets in a quantitative way. But when you take something like a story, which is characters and conflict and themes and worldviews and values and things like that, those are all very qualitative. And to try to take a machine that's very good with quantitative data and get it to analyze qualitative data, especially when it's not a human, I think that's kind of, in many ways, setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah, well said.
And I wanted to add that I think that cuts both ways on both the analysis and the composition side. That a bot or an algorithm, however you want to look at it, and whatever kind of learning it's using, lacks context. And I like this idea of sort of bot personas, right? You have something that's programmed to think as if it had experienced X, Y, and Z. And theoretically, that might give you a better approximation of a single viewer or a single reader. But that introduces a whole other conversation or bias, right? Like, why would I want 100 readers, each one assigned a different persona? How am I determining what those personas are? How is that serving the finished produced film? Or how does that help me write something that feels more, and for lack of a better word, lived in?
I'm not sure I could answer your question, but I do feel that we are butting up against bigger questions, like what an army of 100 bot personas sounds an awful lot like a focus group to me. And similarly, using quantitative systems to judge qualitative outcomes sounds a hell of a lot like my previous career before I met Greg in information services in the public sector in the UK, because civil service, or whatever you call them in America, that's what they live for, is facts and data to say, we're spending the money in the right place. So like in this, it's funny how this conversation, it's about these particular apps that are getting everyone so agitated at the moment. But some of these things are already out there in our lives. They're already quite active, and they're almost like little sleepers that are just, already surrounding us. But because they haven't turned into for better or worse, a potty mouth Trump supporter on Facebook, they have not got the kind of, focus on them that has happened, in the last few months for that product that we won't name. Okay, I want to just quickly have a look here, because we do believe it. We've been chatting for half an hour already. I just want to see if there is something that I want to do. Okay. I'll ask the big question. Do any of you see a point where AI could develop insight? Is it even feasible with the way that AI is at the moment, or the level where it is at the moment? Jason, I'm going to call you back to us. You can kick me off on that one.
At the moment, no. I have a litmus test for it, which is the day that AI can successfully create a Las Vegas Strip magic act that succeeds for 2 years. So it's iteratively creating those acts over the course of 2 years in response to audience expectations and playing with those audience expectations and is aware of what other magicians are doing and one-upping them. Once it can do that, okay, now we're ready to start looking at AI being capable of playing with an audience in a Hitchcockian kind of way and having narrative understanding in the way that we do, understanding narrative beauty, understanding human value in those nuances. Right now, it is very crude in the terms that we understand those concepts. It's super impressive compared to where we were. So it's a novel and it's dazzling and it's amazing what you can do with it compared to what you could do with it even last year. But that's not to say that you're able to just turn it on and go. It's not a threat to writers. And I don't see that really being achieved at any point in time for two real different reasons. One is everything I just said, and that's what Carl was talking about, and Greg as well, that that whole quantitative concept is really all that stuff like narrative value, zeitgeist expectations, all those things that everybody turns on a creator and listens to them talk, like why did they do this instead of this, and all those kinds of things that we try to pull out and learn over time and study. The other is there's no market demand for it. There's no producer that I'm aware of sitting around at an empty desk and just saying, gee, I wish I had more scripts. And there's no writer industry that's sitting around and going, man, I wish we had more writers. We just need more writers in the industry because we have so much work and not enough people to fill the demand. That's not really where there's a demand for it. The demand is on the other side of it. That is, how can you get the screenplay to be ingested through the rest of the production? That's where things are extremely crude still to this day. Breaking a screenplay down into eighths and then getting it, all of the assets moved forward into pre-production department asset needs. That is where the largest amount of gains in market demand are. And that's where I expect to see it evolve.
Okay. So it's producers that are under threat, not writers. Because there's a lot of people in the screen I'm sure would be quite happy to hear that in some way.
To a degree, except for producers always act as like cat wranglers. So I don't know that you could just hand it over to AI.
But no, I suppose there's a Henry Ford, there's still a slight Henry Ford worry in me, which is, there was no need to mechanize the making of a motor car other than a man's vision and a man's greed. And, there was plenty of people to make those cars, but he took that technology and changed pretty much the world forever. So, and we're still living with a lot of it. So it's not unfeasible that someone, even if there isn't a physical demand at the moment, that someone would say, yeah, hell, I'm going to take that leap because I want to see where it goes. And I think it will be better.
I still think you're going to encounter roadblocks at different parts of the process, right? So you might get a producer who is very savvy, can utilize a lot of these tools that Jason's talking about in order to get from point A to point B, but they still have to wait for someone to do something from point B to point C, and you can't automate the actual filmmaking process. Well, you could, but again, I guess an animated something or another, but still, I think that there's just too many roadblocks in order to completely eliminate the human element.
Complexity defends us. Blaise, what do you think? Or what would you like to add?
Well, yeah, I kind of agree with much of what has been said. I mean, for me, though I'm no expert on it, to some extent, an AI successfully writing a good story would, I think, in some ways represent that jump to general AI. I can't imagine narrow AI would be able to conceivably achieve that. But having said that, I mean, I don't know if I can say this, but I just came across something online which I haven't explored fully yet, but it's Stephen Follows, who's a kind of data analyst over here in the UK, and he's just released a podcast in which he is describing his experience. He was hired by a producer to write a script with an AI. So I haven't listened to that yet, but I am going to have a listen to see what he thinks of it.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I think there's lots of just curiosity from, I think, producers and so forth. So it is going to be done, and I don't think the results will probably be very good, but people will experiment because that's what we like doing as humans.
But better than the third Indiana Jones film, maybe?
Possibly, yeah. The fourth one, the third one.
The fourth one, the
Yeah.
one with you know who in.
Alien skulls, yeah.
Yeah. Blaise, could you do us a favor and either put that link for the podcast on the main post in the group at some point so everyone else
I'll do
can.
that right after. Yeah.
Cheers. Carl, what would you like to add before I open this up to questions?
So I think what everybody's been saying is maybe think of a couple things. And one of those is just like with a human written screenplay, it's kind of a funny thing to have to say to describe it as, oh, this one was human written. Just like with a normal screenplay, it's only as smart as the writer is. And same thing with an AI or any other kind of algorithm. It's only as smart as the people making it. And so as far as it ever being able to, an AI being able to analyze a script or even create a script to the level that a human can, I would say it's impossible. Just like a lot of people talk about, well, when are we going to hit the singularity when artificial intelligence is self-aware? And it's like, well, I don't think it's even possible for a machine to be self-aware. So I don't think that's something we have to worry about. I would say that I think that different people, and when I say people, I mean different organizations, different companies will react to this growing interest in AI in different ways. You'll have some people like the other production company that I mentioned earlier that said, you have to sign this waiver that said that you agree that you didn't use AI. And then you've got other people where, no, we want you to use AI, or the producer or the marketing executive might say, let's use AI to write the script and we'll market it explicitly as saying that we used AI because it's novel or because it'll be funny or something like that. So I think we're going to see a lot of different permutations of this ongoing experiment with AI.
Okay. Greg?
Yeah, I think, well, first I'm going to point out for the writers out there that I was there with a couple of screenwriters recently who pointed out to me that the WGA Basic Agreement requires the writer hired be a human being. So I think apparently that's been in there for a long time. I'm not sure why it was originally put in there, but that, to settle the nerves of any writers out there who hear our assessment but are still concerned, once you're in the guild, I think you're protected.
Another good reason to join.
Yeah, exactly. But I think, to end my comment on a positive note, I think where I will agree with some of the comments that Jason made earlier today about the benefits of AI assist in places where there is a demand for it. And I've seen that be quite beneficial in the filmmaking process over the years. You know, the auto rotoscoping is a perfect example. We've seen that take effect with financial projections on a film, and I think that's sort of a perfect example of where AI has actually solved a real problem that human brains could not solve. Where, you know, prior to AI-driven financial analysis, you would get a pitch deck with 5 human-selected comps, and they would say, Get Out and A Quiet Place made, you know, $500 million each. Therefore, my horror film will make somewhere in the average of these 4 films that I've personally selected. And even if that human wanted to, they couldn't be aware of all the films in that genre space and their performance at the same time, because the human brain is just not designed to hold that much data at once. And they wouldn't be aware of all of the obscure films in their genre and budget that released but didn't perform at all. And AI is able to look at the whole universe of things and give you a much more sort of predictive assessment of where your film could land in the mean of all films that performance like yours. So that's an example, I think, where, you know, at Slated, but in many other companies, where we are using AI to process large lists of data and help the human make an assessment about how their film can succeed, and then ideally help that film actually get made. And I think we'll see that more in the applications that the other panelists have mentioned in script breakdowns. We're already seeing it with pitch decks, combing through millions of images across titles of films to help users select better images for their pitch decks based on really advanced AI assisted search. So, and that's benefiting, that's enriching the creative. But the curator is still a human. So that's the stuff that I'm most excited for, and the stuff that we see the most immediate application of in the business that we do, at least.
That is really cool. So effectively, AI is providing a ladder for creativity to get more stuff done. That's a very hopeful message indeed.
Yeah,
okay,
I would add to that real quick.
So,
He's dead on right. That's everything that everybody is truly putting the money towards in R&D. That's where it's going. Yes, we pay attention to the screenplay generative process as far as how AI is doing with it, but it's like, oh, what are they doing? Let's go read their paper and see how they're doing it, and let's go see how Carl put that movie together, and let's go see, you know, I always see this news blip about this, let's go see what that looks like. It's kind of just keeping apprised, but nobody's willing to put the money on it and say, yeah, let's fund that this EBITDA quarter and run with it, because it doesn't really have a purpose that they can ascribe to. The other 2 things is, one, AI can't write a movie. Nobody's really mentioned this, but this is one of the things that's a big stumbling block for it. The way that AI is able to do something is by assessing everything that humans have done,
right.
and then kind of finding an aggregate. We don't make movies by aggregate. That's not how it works, and that's not how consumers consume them. They don't consume an aggregate movie. I mean, they do on there's a certain layer and type, and I won't mention names of things, but they also make holiday cards. There's a certain layer that kind of you could define that way as like aggregate, you know, average movie, but there's no real such thing. Humans don't agree on what makes a good movie. And as long as humans don't agree on what makes a good movie story, then I don't really see AI being able to come to a conclusion that humans will universally agree with.
Cool. No, that's a very good point. I'm glad you raised it. That was another thing that had come up earlier, or come into us earlier. Right. I'm going to go away, and Jenna's going to come back. Hopefully she's got some lovely questions for you. I probably won't talk to you again before we close the broadcast. So on behalf of myself and Short Scripts, just thank you very, very much for the discussion. It's been really, really illuminating. So I'll talk to you later.
Thanks, Justine.
Thanks, Justine.